If you truly want to outsmart anyone, stop looking at other people first and start examining the one person who determines every victory or defeat. Most people lose psychological battles long before another person makes a move because they cannot control what happens inside their own minds. A single insult changes their mood. A little praise inflates their ego. A challenge to their authority makes them defensive. A delay makes them impatient. Without realizing it, they allow strangers to control their emotions, and the moment someone else controls your emotions, they are already influencing your decisions. This is why the first rule of total dominance is not learning how to manipulate others. It is learning how to become impossible to manipulate yourself. The person who masters their own mind has already taken the first step toward outsmarting anyone they encounter. Every interaction between people is a silent psychological test. While conversations appear ordinary on the surface, something much deeper is happening underneath. People are constantly searching for emotional weaknesses. They want to know what offends you, what scares you, what flatters you, and what makes you lose your composure. They are not always doing this with malicious intentions. Sometimes it happens unconsciously, but regardless of the motive, the result is the same. Every emotional reaction you display becomes information someone else can use. If they discover that criticism makes you angry, they now know exactly how to distract you. If they learn that praise makes you careless, they know how to lower your guard. If they realize your pride cannot tolerate being questioned, they can lead you into making reckless decisions simply by challenging your ego. The easiest person to outsmart is not the least intelligent person. It is the person whose emotions are predictable. That is why truly dominant individuals never allow temporary emotions to become permanent decisions. They understand that every emotional impulse carries a hidden cost. Anger makes you reveal more than you intended. Fear causes you to imagine dangers that may not even exist. Pride convinces you to fight battles that offer no reward. Impatience forces you to act before enough information has been gathered. An opponent does not need greater intelligence if they can quietly guide you into these emotional states. They simply wait for your emotions to do their work. While you believe you are making your own choices, you are actually responding exactly as they expected. The psychological game has already been lost because your reactions became predictable. The first sign of real mental strength is not how quickly you respond, but how completely you control the urge to respond. Imagine someone trying repeatedly to provoke you. They expect an argument. They expect a defensive explanation. They expect frustration. Instead, they receive calm observation. Suddenly, their confidence begins to weaken because the script they prepared is no longer working. They cannot predict your next move because you refuse to give them the emotional reaction they were counting on. In that moment, the balance of power quietly changes. They stop controlling the conversation and begin questioning their own strategy. This is exactly how you outsmart anyone, not by overpowering them, but by refusing to become emotionally predictable. Most people misunderstand confidence. They believe confidence means always proving yourself, always having the last word, or always defending your reputation. In reality, those behaviors often reveal insecurity. Someone who truly controls themselves does not feel compelled to answer every accusation or correct every misunderstanding. They know that emotional discipline creates more influence than emotional intensity. They understand that silence can expose another person's impatience, while patience can expose another person's desperation. By remaining composed, they force others to reveal far more about themselves than they ever reveal in return. That information becomes a psychological advantage because the person who understands more usually controls more. Another reason self-mastery leads to total dominance is that it protects your judgment under pressure. High-pressure situations are where most people become easy to outsmart. They rush because they fear missing an opportunity. They argue because they fear appearing weak. They react because they fear losing control. But fear itself becomes the trap. The disciplined mind slows down when everyone else speeds up. It asks better questions instead of making faster assumptions. It observes before acting. While others are trapped inside emotion, the strategist remains guided by clarity. That difference may appear small in the moment, but over time it becomes enormous because clear decisions consistently outperform emotional ones. As this habit becomes part of your character, something remarkable happens. People who once believed they could influence you begin losing confidence in their own methods. Their criticism no longer changes your direction. Their praise no longer clouds your judgment. Their pressure no longer forces your timing. They are left facing a person whose decisions cannot be bought with approval, shaken by insults, or rushed by fear. Without realizing it, they begin adapting to you instead of you adapting to them. This is the essence of total dominance. You are no longer reacting to the psychological games of others. They are reacting to the stability of your mind. The greatest strategists in history were never the loudest people in the room. They were the ones who remained clear while everyone else became emotional, who stayed patient while everyone else rushed, and who protected their judgment when others surrendered theirs to impulse. They understood that the strongest advantage in any psychological contest is not controlling another person's emotions first. It is making sure no one can control yours. Because the moment your mind becomes untouchable, you stop being someone others can manipulate and become someone who quietly outsmarts them before the real battle has even begun. If you want to outsmart anyone, you must understand a simple truth that most people completely ignore. Information decides power. Every conversation is more than an exchange of words, it is an exchange of psychological advantage. While ordinary people speak to be noticed, strategic people speak to understand. They know that the person who collects the most information while revealing the least will almost always control the interaction. This is why the second rule of total dominance is to let people reveal their minds while you reveal almost nothing. The less others know about your intentions, emotions, ambitions, and weaknesses, the harder it becomes for them to predict you. At the same time, the more you learn about them, the easier it becomes to stay several moves ahead without them ever realizing they are giving you the advantage. Most people unknowingly surrender their power the moment they begin talking. They reveal their frustrations, explain their future plans, announce their goals, defend their opinions, and expose their emotional triggers. They believe openness creates influence, but in reality, uncontrolled openness often creates vulnerability. Every unnecessary detail becomes another piece of your psychological profile. If someone knows what motivates you, they know how to tempt you. If they know what scares you, they know how to pressure you. If they understand what you desperately want, they know exactly where your judgment is most likely to fail. Outsmarting people does not always require superior intelligence. Sometimes it simply requires refusing to provide the information they need to outsmart you. This is why the most dangerous observers rarely become the center of attention. They enter conversations with curiosity instead of the need to impress. Rather than thinking about what clever thing to say next, they focus entirely on what the other person is revealing. Human beings naturally expose themselves when they feel heard. Give someone enough attention and they begin sharing far more than they originally intended. They speak about their ambitions, disappointments, fears, insecurities, relationships, and opinions. They often believe they are controlling the conversation simply because they are doing most of the talking. In reality, they are handing you the map to their own psychology. Every story reveals values. Every complaint reveals emotional weaknesses. Every repeated topic reveals hidden priorities. Without asking directly, you begin understanding exactly what drives their decisions. Silence becomes one of your greatest strategic weapons because it encourages other people to continue speaking. Most individuals are uncomfortable with quiet moments. The instant a pause appears, they rush to fill it. They explain more than necessary, justify decisions nobody questioned, or reveal emotions they intended to hide. The disciplined strategist understands this pattern. Instead of interrupting, they remain patient. They allow silence to create space, knowing that many people will voluntarily reveal information simply because they cannot tolerate uncertainty. This is not manipulation through deception. It is understanding human nature well enough to recognize that people often expose themselves when they feel no resistance. Another reason this rule creates total dominance is that people trust those who listen. Ironically, the less you speak about yourself, the more interesting you become. Others begin assuming depth because they cannot easily define you. They wonder what you are thinking, what your true intentions are, and why you reveal so little. Their attention gradually shifts away from protecting themselves and toward understanding you. Meanwhile, your attention remains fixed on understanding them. This creates an invisible imbalance. They are trying to solve the mystery of your mind while unknowingly exposing the structure of theirs. That psychological imbalance is exactly how strategic thinkers outsmart people without ever entering direct conflict. There is another advantage that most people never recognize. When you reveal very little about your future plans, nobody can prepare for them. Announcing every goal may satisfy the ego, but it also gives competitors time to anticipate your actions. They begin studying your habits, predicting your next move, and preparing responses before you ever act. Strategic individuals avoid this mistake. They allow results to appear before explanations. They understand that surprise is one of the strongest psychological advantages in any competition. The less predictable your intentions become, the more difficult it is for anyone to interfere with your progress. This approach also protects you from emotional manipulation. Many people test others through casual conversation. They ask personal questions, make subtle criticisms, or offer compliments simply to observe reactions. They are measuring confidence, insecurity, pride, and emotional stability. The more information you reveal through words and reactions, the easier it becomes for them to identify which emotional buttons can be pressed later. But when you remain composed, thoughtful, and selective with what you share, those opportunities disappear. They cannot easily manipulate what they do not fully understand. Instead of reading your mind, they are left guessing, and uncertainty always favors the person who stays in control of their own information. The smartest strategists never confuse secrecy with dishonesty. They simply understand that not every thought needs to be spoken, not every plan needs to be announced, and not every opinion needs to be defended. They value observation more than performance and understanding more than attention. While others compete to be heard, they quietly gather the knowledge that allows them to predict behavior, recognize hidden motives, and make decisions with far greater precision. That is why they consistently stay ahead, not because they know everything, but because they know the right things before anyone else does. Because the moment you know far more about other people than they know about you, the psychological balance shifts in your favor, and outsmarting them becomes a matter of patience rather than force. One of the fastest ways to outsmart anyone is to become impossible to predict. Most people believe intelligence alone creates dominance, but intelligence loses much of its power when your behavior follows the same pattern every single time. Human beings naturally search for routines because routines make people easier to understand. The moment someone can accurately predict your reactions, they no longer need to guess what you will do next. They begin preparing for your decisions before you even make them. That is why the third rule of total dominance is not becoming mysterious for the sake of appearance. It is refusing to become psychologically readable. When people cannot predict your timing, your responses, or your strategy, they are forced to react to you instead of executing their own plans. That is how you quietly outsmart people before they even realize the game has changed. Think about how most people respond under pressure. Criticize them and they immediately defend themselves. Ignore them and they seek attention. Praise them and they lower their guard. Delay their success and frustration begins controlling their decisions. These reactions feel natural because they are driven by emotion rather than strategy. But to an observant opponent, they are incredibly valuable. Every repeated emotional response becomes a pattern, and every pattern becomes an opportunity for manipulation. If someone knows exactly how you react in every situation, they can influence your behavior without ever using force. They simply create the conditions that trigger your predictable response. The psychological battle is already moving in their favor because they understand your habits better than you understand your own. The people who achieve total dominance understand that consistency and predictability are not the same thing. Your principles should remain stable, but your methods should remain flexible. Your values should never change, But the way you respond to different situations should depend on strategy rather than habit. Sometimes silence creates more influence than speaking. Sometimes immediate action is necessary, while other situations reward patience. Sometimes walking away is stronger than winning an argument. Strategic people never allow themselves to become prisoners of routine because they know routine eventually becomes visible, and visible patterns eventually become weaknesses. Imagine playing chess against someone who always opens the game with exactly the same sequence of moves. At first, that strategy may appear effective because inexperienced opponents struggle to respond. But after enough games, everyone begins recognizing the pattern. They prepare counters before the match even begins. The player who once looked brilliant suddenly becomes easy to defeat because nothing about their strategy is unexpected anymore. Life works the same way. Your competitors, rivals, and even the people around you are constantly learning from your behavior. Every repeated habit teaches them something about how your mind operates. If you always react the same way, you are quietly training them to outsmart you. If you learn to adapt while remaining emotionally disciplined, you reverse the situation. Now they must constantly adjust to you. Another reason unpredictability creates psychological dominance is that uncertainty consumes mental energy. When people think they have you figured out, they feel relaxed. Their confidence grows because they believe the future is easy to anticipate. But the moment you break the pattern, certainty disappears. Suddenly they begin asking questions. Why didn't you react? Why are you waiting? Why did you choose a completely different approach this time? Instead of focusing on executing their own strategy, they become distracted trying to understand yours. Their attention shifts from controlling the situation to interpreting your behavior. That shift alone gives you a significant psychological advantage because while they are busy analyzing you, your mind remains focused on the objective. Being unpredictable does not mean acting randomly. Random behavior creates confusion for everyone, including yourself. Total dominance comes from intentional unpredictability. Every decision should still serve a purpose. The difference is that your purpose should not be obvious to everyone watching. Many people mistake impulsiveness for unpredictability, but the two are completely different. Impulsive people are actually easy to predict because they always follow emotion. Strategic people are difficult to predict because they follow judgment. They remain calm enough to choose the response that creates the greatest long-term advantage rather than the one that satisfies a temporary feeling. There is another hidden benefit to becoming psychologically unreadable. It protects your plans before they become reality. Many people announce every ambition, explain every strategy, and reveal every next step because they enjoy discussing their future. But the moment you reveal too much, others begin preparing for your arrival. They create obstacles, offer distractions, or simply adjust their own behavior to reduce your advantage. Strategic individuals understand that surprise is one of the most valuable assets in any psychological contest. They allow their actions to speak before their intentions do. By the time people realize what they have accomplished, it is often too late to interfere. As you become less predictable, something remarkable happens. People stop assuming they know you. They become more cautious with their own decisions because certainty has disappeared. The tactics that once worked against you begin failing because your reactions are no longer automatic. Those who relied on manipulating your emotions suddenly find themselves dealing with someone who thinks before responding. They become hesitant because they cannot confidently anticipate your next move. Without raising your voice, demanding attention, or displaying force, you have quietly taken control of the psychological rhythm of the interaction. That is exactly how people who master strategy outsmart anyone. They force others to react while they remain free to choose. Because the moment your opponents can no longer predict your next move, they stop controlling the game and begin playing by rules that only you fully understand. One of the clearest signs of an inexperienced mind is the belief that every challenge deserves a response and every opponent deserves a battle. Most people measure strength by how often they fight. They argue over small insults, defend themselves against every criticism, and feel compelled to prove their superiority whenever someone questions them. At first, This behavior looks confident, but in reality, it reveals a dangerous weakness. It means other people can control your attention whenever they choose. The fourth rule of total dominance is learning that you do not outsmart people by fighting every battle. You outsmart them by deciding which battles are worth your energy and allowing impatient opponents to defeat themselves through their own emotions. The greatest strategists understand that victory is not about winning every conflict. It is about winning the conflicts that truly matter. Every confrontation has a hidden price. It costs time, emotional energy, focus, and opportunities that could have been invested elsewhere. Intelligent people understand that these resources are limited. That is why they never spend them carelessly. Before responding to an attack, they ask themselves a simple question: will this battle move me closer to my objective, or will it simply satisfy my ego? Most conflicts exist only because two egos refuse to remain silent. The moment you learn to separate your long-term goals from your temporary emotions, you begin making decisions that others mistake for restraint, but are actually strategic superiority. You stop reacting because someone wants your attention and start acting only when your response creates a genuine advantage. Many people unknowingly destroy their own position because they cannot tolerate being ignored, criticized, or challenged. Present them with a small insult, and they immediately begin explaining themselves. Question their abilities, and they desperately try to prove you wrong. Spread a rumor, and they rush to defend their reputation. Every emotional reaction gives their opponent exactly what they wanted: control over their focus. While they are busy fighting distractions, they lose sight of their larger purpose. This is why emotionally reactive people are surprisingly easy to outsmart. You do not need superior intelligence to defeat them. You only need patience. Their own emotions will eventually make costly decisions on your behalf. The strongest minds understand that silence is often a more powerful response than argument. Silence forces impatient people into an uncomfortable position. They expect resistance, they expect explanations, they expect emotional conflict. When none of those things appear, uncertainty begins replacing confidence. They often continue talking, becoming louder, more emotional, and increasingly careless because they are trying to provoke the reaction they expected from the beginning. Without realizing it, they begin exposing their impatience, insecurity, and lack of discipline. They reveal weaknesses that would have remained hidden if you had simply argued with them. By refusing unnecessary conflict, you create the conditions where your opponent starts defeating themselves. This principle becomes even more powerful when you understand the role of ego. Ego constantly whispers that every challenge is personal. It convinces you that walking away is weakness and that proving yourself is necessary. But experienced strategists recognize ego as one of the easiest weaknesses to manipulate. If someone can make you fight whenever they challenge your pride, they control your behavior without using force. They decide where your attention goes. They choose the timing of your reactions. They shape your decisions by attacking your identity instead of your logic. The person who cannot ignore an insult is often easier to control than the person who lacks intelligence. True dominance begins when your decisions are guided by purpose rather than wounded pride. Another reason selective battles lead to total dominance is that time naturally exposes emotional people. Those who lie eventually contradict themselves. Those who manipulate eventually become too confident. Those driven by arrogance often underestimate the consequences of their own behavior. If you constantly interrupt this process by reacting too quickly, you prevent them from revealing their true nature. Strategic people understand that patience is not passive. It is active observation. While others rush to attack, they quietly collect information. They allow patterns to emerge. They wait until the right moment, when a single action achieves what endless arguments never could. This is how they consistently outsmart people, not by acting first, but by acting with precision. There is also a psychological advantage in refusing unnecessary conflict. Your opponents begin losing confidence because their usual tactics stop working. They criticize you, yet you remain focused. They provoke you, yet your emotions remain steady. They attempt to distract you, yet your attention stays fixed on your objective. Eventually, Frustration shifts from your mind into theirs. Instead of controlling your reactions, they begin reacting to your discipline. They become impatient because they cannot force you into the emotional battle they prepared for. The psychological balance quietly changes. You are no longer defending your position. They are struggling to understand why they cannot influence yours. The people who achieve lasting influence understand that not every victory is visible. Sometimes the greatest win is refusing to participate in a conflict designed to weaken you. While others exhaust themselves chasing every argument and proving every point, you continue building your knowledge, strengthening your position, and moving toward goals that actually matter. Over time, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. They remain trapped in endless battles while you continue advancing. That is the true meaning of total dominance. It is not measured by how many people you defeat in public, but by how rarely you allow anyone to pull you away from your purpose. Because the moment you stop fighting every battle and start choosing only the ones that truly serve your objective, you force emotional opponents to become the architects of their own defeat while you quietly move beyond their reach. Most people spend their lives trying to gain power by making others like them. They chase approval, seek recognition, and constantly adjust their behavior to fit other people's expectations. On the surface, this seems like a smart strategy because it attracts attention, but beneath the surface, it creates dependence. The moment your confidence depends on another person's approval, your freedom begins to disappear. Anyone who controls your need for acceptance can quietly influence your decisions. That is why the fifth rule of total dominance is completely different. If you truly want to outsmart anyone, stop trying to become more liked and start becoming more valuable. When your value becomes difficult to replace, the balance of power changes naturally. People begin needing your presence more than you need their validation, and that is where real dominance begins. Human nature follows a simple principle that most people overlook. We naturally respect what is rare, difficult to replace, and consistently valuable. Think about the people who hold lasting influence in any field. It is rarely because they demand attention. It is because they possess knowledge, discipline, skills, judgment, or reliability that few others can offer. Their value speaks louder than their words. They do not need to convince people to respect them because their actions make them difficult to ignore. This is why the smartest strategists invest far more energy in developing themselves than in impressing others. They understand that genuine value creates influence without constant effort. Many people make the mistake of believing that dominance comes from intimidation. They try to appear powerful by controlling conversations, showing authority, or reminding others of their importance. These tactics may create temporary fear, but they rarely create lasting respect. In fact, people usually begin looking for opportunities to escape those who rely on force alone. Real dominance works differently. It is built on becoming someone whose presence improves situations, solves problems, and creates opportunities. When people consistently benefit from your abilities, they naturally begin valuing your contribution. Influence created through value lasts far longer than influence created through fear. This is also why emotional independence is one of the greatest forms of power. The moment you stop chasing approval, your decisions become clearer. You no longer say yes simply because you fear disappointing people. You no longer change your opinions to avoid criticism. You no longer sacrifice your standards to gain temporary acceptance. Instead, your choices begin reflecting your principles rather than other people's expectations. This quiet confidence is surprisingly powerful because it makes your behavior difficult to manipulate. Those who once controlled others through praise or rejection suddenly discover that those methods no longer work on you. You have removed one of the easiest paths into your mind. Another mistake people make is trying to appear successful instead of becoming genuinely capable. They spend enormous amounts of time creating an impressive image while neglecting the skills that create real influence. They want recognition before competence. Strategic individuals reverse that order completely. They focus on learning, improving, and mastering their craft even when nobody is watching. They understand that image can attract attention for a moment, but ability keeps attention over time. When your knowledge consistently produces results, your reputation grows naturally. You no longer need to advertise your value because people experience it directly. There is another psychological advantage to becoming highly valuable. It gives you options. People who possess rare skills, strong discipline, and dependable character are rarely trapped by circumstances. They can leave unhealthy relationships, walk away from manipulative environments, and reject unfair opportunities because they know they can create value elsewhere. Their confidence comes from capability rather than dependency. On the other hand, those who have built nothing meaningful often remain stuck because they fear losing what little approval they already have. The person with options negotiates from strength. The person without options negotiates from fear. That difference alone changes every interaction. Notice how truly influential people rarely chase attention. They are too busy improving themselves. While others compete for recognition, they quietly develop abilities that make recognition inevitable. They understand that every new skill increases their independence. Every disciplined habit strengthens their confidence. Every problem they learn to solve makes them more valuable to the people around them. Over time, this steady investment creates something extraordinary. Others begin seeking their advice, respecting their judgment, and trusting their decisions, not because they demanded respect, but because they consistently earned it. The greatest strategists also understand that value is more difficult to attack than reputation. Someone may criticize your personality, misunderstand your intentions, or spread false opinions about you. But if your work consistently produces results, if your judgment repeatedly proves reliable, and if your character remains steady under pressure, those attacks gradually lose their influence. Reality begins speaking louder than rumor. Your competence becomes your strongest defense because it cannot be easily replaced or imitated. This is one of the smartest ways to outsmart anyone. Instead of fighting every critic, you become so useful and so dependable that their opinions become increasingly irrelevant. As your value grows, something remarkable begins to happen. People stop seeing you as someone who needs constant approval and begin recognizing you as someone who creates opportunities. Conversations change, relationships change, negotiations change. Even your enemies are forced to acknowledge your usefulness because competence commands respect long after charm has faded. Without demanding authority, you quietly become someone others hesitate to lose. That is the essence of total dominance, not forcing people to choose you, but becoming so valuable that ignoring you becomes their greatest mistake. Because the moment your value exceeds your need for approval, you stop chasing influence and begin attracting it, making it almost impossible for anyone to outsmart or control you. After mastering your emotions, learning to observe more than you speak, becoming impossible to predict, refusing unnecessary battles, and building undeniable value, there is one final principle that separates ordinary influence from total dominance. It is the ability to win so quietly that people do not recognize your strategy until the results are impossible to ignore. Most people announce every ambition before they have achieved it. They reveal every plan, celebrate every small victory, and constantly seek recognition for progress that has barely begun. They mistake attention for power, but attention is temporary. Real dominance is built on results that speak long after words have been forgotten. If you truly want to outsmart anyone, learn to let your success become your loudest message, while your strategy remains almost invisible. Human nature is fascinated by appearances. People are naturally drawn to those who talk confidently about what they are going to do. Grand promises, bold declarations, and dramatic announcements attract immediate attention because they create excitement. Yet, excitement is not the same as achievement. The more you announce your intentions, the more expectations you create. You also give competitors time to prepare for your next move. They begin studying your habits, questioning your methods, and looking for opportunities to slow your progress. In many cases, they never needed to discover your strategy because you revealed it willingly. This is why the smartest strategists rarely advertise their future. They protect their plans until action has already placed them several steps ahead. There is another psychological reason quiet success is so powerful. People are comfortable with what they believe they understand. When they think they know exactly where you are in life, they stop paying close attention. They assume tomorrow will look like today. Strategic individuals use this tendency to their advantage. While others are distracted by appearances, they continue learning, improving, and building behind the scenes. Their growth is steady rather than dramatic. Then one day, the results become impossible to ignore. The promotion arrives, the business expands, the reputation grows, the opportunities multiply. To outsiders, it appears sudden. In reality, it is the outcome of disciplined work that remained hidden because it never needed constant attention. Many people unknowingly weaken themselves by seeking recognition too early. They feel a constant urge to prove they are intelligent, capable, or successful. Every compliment becomes addictive, and every achievement is immediately shared because external validation temporarily satisfies the ego. But there is a hidden danger in this habit. The more your motivation depends on applause, the easier it becomes for others to influence your behavior. You begin making choices that earn attention instead of choices that create lasting results. True dominance requires the opposite mindset. Your greatest satisfaction should come from progress itself, not from convincing other people that you are progressing. When your focus remains on mastery rather than recognition, your decisions become far more strategic and far less emotional. Quiet success also creates a powerful psychological advantage because it forces people to underestimate you. Those who constantly advertise themselves